Welcome to Franklin Covey's C-Suite Conversations podcast. My name is Patrick Ledden, and each week I have the opportunity to sit down and talk to a senior leader, learn about the successes they've achieved, the struggles they've overcome, and what they've learned along the way. And today is going to be just that kind of conversation. I'm joined by Frank Poncheri, who joined Vertiv as the Chief Human Resource Officer in September of 2024. But his time there has been built upon a long career working in this space. He worked at General Electric Aerospace and a decade at Owens Corning, where he held leadership roles, including VP of HR and corporate integration. Vertiv, if you're not familiar with it, it's a Fortune 500 leader in critical digital infrastructure, from power systems and thermal management to AI-ready solutions. There's a lot going on in this organization with, get this, over 30,000 employees. With all that said, Frank, welcome to the show. So glad you're here to help us have a great conversation.
Thank you, Patrick. Very happy to be here and certainly appreciate you having me on the podcast. Look forward to the discussion.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and we do look forward to it as well. I know the listeners are going to just learn so much from you. You and I had a chance to chat a little bit before we got started, and then it hits one of those moments where you're like, hey, we need to record this thing and start sharing these ideas with others. So if you don't mind, kind of pull the curtain back a little bit. Tell everybody who you are and kind of what got you to where you are.
Sure. So Frank Poncheri, human resources professional for the last 15 plus years, and that's honestly just gone by extraordinarily fast. And I think that's because I've had the opportunity to work in industries and for companies and with partners that have very valued human capital and the strategy that can come with building a strong human capital base in your company. I'm from Ohio originally, so now back in Columbus, Ohio, after traveling the world with my family across those three companies. So happy to be back home. A graduate of Ohio State University a couple of times, both for my undergrad and master's degree. And maybe a fun fact, was in the Ohio State University marching band as a baritone player. And as we get started in university football here in the United States, a big weekend for Ohio State playing the University of Texas coming up on Saturday. So strong alma mater connections.
Yeah, folks, if you don't know the Ohio State Marching Band, you need to check it out, because every year it seems like, Frank, they put some stuff out that's just amazing what they do on the field.
It was one of the more innovative organizations before its time, and it was treated maybe a little bit differently than normal marching bands. And it certainly was a definition of a high performance culture, which then really kind of dovetails to some of the things we're doing now on the HR front as well. So yeah, it was very cool. Thank you.
Well, while we're on it, what did you learn back those days marching and playing the baritone?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One was you had to be ready weekly, Patrick. So 225 person organization, about 600 people tried out every year, and your spot was never a given. You had to try out year over year. And in fact, I had a friend and a personal close acquaintance that got cut their fifth year because they were underprepared. And so preparation and that constant strive for excellence was instilled very early in this organization, and that you don't take anything for granted because it could be gone the next day. So the level of preparation, the level of execution required to be ready week in and week out, really, I think, instilled some personal values in me that have then stuck on for the next 15 years.
Well, I think that's really hopeful to the folks who maybe they have children who are in the arts or in athletics or whatever it might be, to realize that some of the lessons they're learning right now will be really applicable. And in fact, when we were getting ready for this, I was thinking about the career you've had and how you've moved both geographically and organizationally. And I'm just curious, just like what you learned early on about being ready and being prepared and how that's helped you in your career, what are some of the experiences you've had that really shaped how you approach your job today?
Yeah, I think on the professional side, Patrick, one of the best pieces of advice I had ever gotten from a very early mentor was chase the opportunity, not the job. And so, do you really understand what problem it is you're going to solve and what sort of unique skill set or capability you might hold to be able to solve that problem? And it's a bit of a methodology I've taken throughout my career when evaluating kind of new opportunities, new roles, and new partnerships. And it's served us well between all three stops. But I think none more really true than moving to Helsinki, Finland with Owens Corning. That was an international assignment for a couple of years. To think that you're a Central Ohio, United States-based kid, and you have this opportunity to move all around the world and get this global experience and meet people from different cultures and different backgrounds and shape your worldview was a stop along my career that was clearly a differentiator. And why I say that is because when I was actually looking for or pursuing the opportunity with Vertiv, one of my design criteria was I wanted to be a C-suite member of a global company. And I think it was because of those formative experiences in previous roles and rotations that just made it so much more interesting to meet people when you can represent them from all across the world, which we are as a global employer. So for anybody coming up through their career, I think a piece of advice that way is chase the opportunity. And really, the more you can say yes to things, the more curious you're going to be and have a really competitive advantage in your career as to the breadth of things that you get to see and experience.
It's funny, Frank. I was talking to my dad not that long ago. I was actually back up in Chicago where I grew up at, and we were talking, and he had just shared with me. So my dad's 94, and he just
Wow.
shared with me some advice he gave one of my nephews, which was say yes to things. And I
Yes.
just thought it's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to say it took him 94 years to figure this out. I think he figured it out in his career as well. But why is it so valuable, do you think, to say yes?
Well, it just opens up new doors that clearly would have been closed before you even knew what they had to offer. And so for me, I think what I've seen in my HR career is folks will really, whether no matter what function, what business they support, they'll sometimes let geography bound their opportunity sphere. And that's just something we never did as a family. We always said, okay, if there's a role in Texas or if there's a role in South Carolina, a role in Finland, people choose to live where they are, and we want to go experience why that is. And if you go into it with an open mind, a sense of curiosity for what you're going to learn and what you're going to explore, we have always found something that has changed our lives. Either we have a new friendship base, we acquired a new skill or experience, we have a new vacation destination that we go back and visit with on the personal side. But we've been so pleasantly surprised every time we've said yes to an opportunity. But I would not let that geographic bound, if you can, if you're in a position where you can relocate and can move. I think it just affords you so much more of a wide aperture of the opportunity you can go pursue.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some folks listening that may find it more challenging than others to say yes to those type of opportunities, especially if there's a family situation or something that there
Of
might
course.
be. But there's also people who are just kind of mulling it over, and maybe they're comfortable where they're at. And boy, this sounds like a lot of work and a lot of change, and I don't know if I'll like it or any of those type of things. My wife has said. We bloom where we're planted. And I think that's so true because we have moved around a bit in our career as well. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the family side of things. And you don't have to divulge,
Yeah.
obviously, anything you don't want to, but how did you kind of have those conversations and not lose the focus on what you were trying to do as a family?
No, I'm very blessed, Patrick. So my wife is my best friend in the world, and we met at Ohio State in the marching band. We have two young boys, 10 and 8 years old now, Dominic and Christopher, who were both born in different locations as part of our career journey and move. I think when we moved to abroad, they were 4 and 6 years old, so still pretty
Mm.
young. And what I would say is take the emotion out of the decision. So we had conversations as a family unit well before any decision was then required. So are we willing to move? If the answer is yes, where are we willing to go and why? How long are we willing to stay there? Having all those design kind of principles settled with your most important client group, your family, like I said, well ahead before the time is necessary to make the decision was a critical path for us. And I would venture a guess my wife, if she was on the podcast, Joanna, would say the same thing that we take every opportunity as a partnership and we say, what do we think we're going to get for us on the professional side and helping a career journey? What do we think on the personal side it's going to develop our kids into better global citizens versus not? And I will tell you, we just had this conversation as a family the other night. Would you have gone back? Would you go for another abroad assignment? And both kids immediately said, absolutely, let's go do it. They've got little pen pals from all around the world from their international school. And that's something that I think has just been a blessing bestowed on our family. But the key lesson here for anybody who's considering this in their career, have the conversation outside of the opportunity presentation because it just takes any of the emotion away from it and you can really look at the rational side of your decision making process.
I love that you shared that because I do think that this plays a big role, right? I mean, obviously, we're talking to people in the C-suite, and we talk a lot about goals and objectives and how we execute on those, and how we put systems and practices in place and develop people. But there's also lots of other people in our lives, right? Our
Yeah.
family, and sometimes that family pays a price if we aren't willing to, have these conversations in advance. All of a sudden, that one family member comes home from work and says, "I got a great opportunity to travel to the other side of the world," and everybody else around the dinner table, if you even have one of those, is sitting there going, "Wait a minute, I have friends at school, or I've got it, whatever it might be. That sounds great, but why didn't we talk about this before we're emotionally invested in it?"
And it impacts us so much at work. And regardless of where you're at in the organizational hierarchy, whether it's an entry level person just coming from university or all the way up to the C suite, if something is not correct on the home front, it will impact your performance on the work front. And I agree with you. I think it's so important to have those continuously have those conversations. In fact, I'm recruiting a couple of very top level talents now, trying to get them to come to the Columbus area. And this was a conversation I had as late as last night that one of those top talents was saying, "Hey, I just built this home. We just finished building our forever home. And
Hmm.
Frank, I don't know if now is the right time to come to Columbus, even if the dream job is there." And so this give and take between how do I help that person really ensure there's going to be balance and that the home front will be well looked after, but this still is something the time is ripe to come join us and do some really cool things with Vertiv that may work out really, really well for your career. So it's a conversation that continuously happens.
Yeah, it really is. Really is. Thanks so much for sharing that. You mentioned as you were going through, you said, saying yes allows you to walk through some new doors or some
Yeah,
new doors. I think your organization's doing a lot of work through some new doors. In
yeah,
that, a lot of us hear about AI, maybe we play with it a little bit, maybe we use it all the time, maybe we're nervous about how it's changing our world, maybe we see
sure.
the opportunity, all these type of things. Tell us a little bit about what the organization's up to these days, because I kind of teased it in the intro, and then how your role supports that.
Yeah, so our organization absolutely is in service of everything critical infrastructure for the data center boom. Artificial intelligence is certainly driving a market growth like we've never seen before at Vertiv. And human resources gets to play a really cool part in that because it's on us to make sure our organization and workforce planning is ready and proactive, dare I say, to capture that growth. That our people are going to be the ones who are really successfully helping us win customer business, service our customers in the right way, and have the right technological partnerships that keep us one or two generations ahead of the technology deployment. So, from an HR standpoint, I think all the time about do I have the right footprint in engineering and research and development? How can I get more augmentation of our capacity of engineers through AI tools in our own processes? How do I create the right university partnerships to get our employer branding out in the communities of which we serve? Because candidly, Vertiv being a newer employer since the IPO and over these last 5 years is not coming with some of the name brand recognition that arguably maybe we should be getting based on the growth prioritization that we've seen in the marketplace over the last few years. So all of these things, and then you talk about even inside our team, how do we grow a culture that is not at all fearful of the AI change? And I think what I've learned the most so far, Patrick, is that AI is a collaborator for us. It's like having another work partner inside your office. You can play five different roles to your one that maybe you could have played before artificial intelligence. And how do we put that into work for us in our plants, in our engineering, and ultimately to service our customers is quite the fun part of being at Vertiv at a time where growth is something we're going to be chasing for a little bit here, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I heard somebody say the other day, it's been a little while now, in a conversation, basically like thinking about AI, even tools like ChatGPT or things that
Yeah,
people are using regularly, as more of a, it's not your thought leader, it's your thought partner. And
yeah.
you're still the leader in this dynamic. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's 1,000% accurate, and how our chief product technology officer group, how our CEO even thinks about this is that AI is here to help make things easier, help make us more productive, our processes more efficient, but it doesn't replace the human skepticism or the human interaction where you can really confirm that you're on the right track with how the AI tools are being utilized. So it is this partnership, and it's something that I think assuages some of the fear culture that maybe comes with AI, and it gets you into that more curiosity zone of how can I collaborate with this thing? And the more I start using tools like ChatGPT, the more I see how cool they actually are. And it learns as you go, which is part of the fun with AI. And so I think it's only going to build upon itself, and it's going to become more the commonplace for companies around the world. And those who are not using AI or on the forefront of that curiosity wave are the ones that aren't going to win in the marketplace. I think they're going to get left behind a little bit quick. So I agree. I think you're spot on with what you heard. It is this collaborative partnership and does not completely replace the human element whatsoever.
Well, one thing I think people love about a podcast like this, Frank, and people like you, again, thanks for joining us. You give us a kind of a glimpse into your life and your work and what you're doing. And when I think about what's going on at Vertiv, you're working in a rapidly expanding space.
Yeah.
You're providing something very vital to that space. You have both the AI utilization and other technology utilization just expanding globally, and at the same time, you have these tools going on in your team. You have very skills you're looking for in your people, and you're developing your people are very much in demand these days. There's just a lot going on in that world.
Yeah.
I take us like into like what's the day-to-day rhythm look like for you? What are the things that you kind of make sure you keep your finger on the pulse of?
Yeah, so I think to your point, compartmentalization is key to ensure your strategic initiatives are moving at the pace you expect them to move. So I'll give you a couple of examples, even as late as today. I started my morning talking to Greater China, our business out east, and saying, okay, how are we thinking about our new business president that we've just placed? How is his onboarding going? How is the team reacting to him coming in from the outside and really driving some of the Vertiv growth we expect in that particular region? And that connection being so critical to the success, his success for both the business and his personal success on our executive leadership team. You then move very rapidly from that one-to-one conversation, albeit halfway across the world, all the way across the world, and then you're leading a town hall and talking about for 32,000 employees, how is HR and my team thinking about leadership development, which is a critical component to driving growth, and functional capabilities development. What makes a good HR person, good supply chain person, great engineer, and how are we building those systems inherently into our development tools within Vertiv?
Hmm.
So you get this excitement and this buzz that comes from that town hall, which then generates a bunch of questions coming from your employee base about when can I have that course? When can I expect to go through it myself? How do I nominate me or others for those courses? And you have to be always ready to
Yeah,
ensure your product is
they're
ready to go.
like they're like those things sound great, Frank. Can we have those
When
yesterday?
exactly, exactly. And so for me, it's about making sure that the curriculum, and I think in a high growth environment like Vertiv, the curriculum doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be done. It's something that is always going to continuously evolve. And how do you take interactions from the people you are sending through those leadership courses and learning from them and then getting it better? So those are a couple of the items that I was just working on this morning. And then you start thinking about, okay, how do I then move into now we're going to hire a chief financial officer? So we made an announcement. Our chief financial officer incumbent, David Fallon, has made the decision to retire, and we love him. We hate to see him go. But then you quickly move from, again, the macro 32,000 people and capability models to a very senior leader in the organization, critically important to driving Vertiv's growth and finding the right person to take us to that next endeavor. So for me, it's the balance between what's most important, how do you gain the economies of scale through setting up programs and people to be successful, and then how do you ensure all of it is in service to the culture that you have stated that you're driving for your company. And we're one of high performance that's focused on people who deliver results to capture market for our customers. And that's really what I think about every single day.
When you talk about people delivering results and capturing market, how much or how important does understanding like the purpose of Vertiv matter to you and to the executive team and to your employees?
Oh, I think it's very much. I mean, the purpose of why we are here and how we think about the day-to-day work that's going to service the next 20, 30 years of where the data center industry can go is something we constantly speak about. And do we have the right people who subscribe to that culture and what we're trying to do right now? Because they're the ones who are getting the work done, right? The ELT, the executive leadership team, we help set the direction, we help create the tools to be successful. But it's our team members, our associates who are really getting the work driven and accomplished. And so, how do we make sure that they're aligned to the purpose is something that's very important to us.
When I think about the growth going on in the organization and the strategy you're looking to execute, It reminds me of organizations, papers and things I've read before that talks about one of the biggest choke points, I should say, for organizations trying to execute big, bold strategy is not having enough leaders ready right now to do the job or to do
Yeah.
the job into the future. And you mentioned it earlier with town halls and talking about various programs. I mean, what do you look at from almost from a kind of operational, tactical perspective about how do I make sure I have the right leaders getting the right experiences?
Yeah, you said it well, Patrick. Leadership is essential for growth. I subscribe to that. We believe that the only way we're going to capture the marketplace is to have leaders that can put whole teams and organizations into motion on the right products and initiatives at the right time. And so for me, it does become a bit of a math game, right? And so when you look at your succession planning process, you look at the 60-ish global roles that are critical to having staffed up with top talent across the world. How do you have two people that are internally always ready to pursue taking on that next step, that next level? And one of the things that I worry about the most, or I think about the most, is we ask our associates, our leaders, to have a general manager mindset. So, how do you really have strong decision making? How do you have a strategic vision and communications process? And then how do you make decisions like it's your own money and that you're investing in the right places at the right time? And this is our general manager mindset. But at Vertiv, we realized we had a gap here. This is something where our general manager pipeline was not as robust as we wanted to see. So human resources steps in and says, we don't have the math to really be able to be confident that we have that too deep succession across all of our general manager roles. What's a tailored and specific experiential rotational program that we can implement across many years of a person's career to get them general manager ready at these global levels? And I'm proud to say that's finally launched in 2025. So we have 14 participants from around the world that will get very tailored rotations over the course of, let's call it a 6 to 8 year period, that makes sure that we are ready and we never get into this gapped issue in our general manager pipeline again. They get exposure to the CEO, they move around the globe. So, bringing back to our conversation around saying yes to opportunities and open to geographies, two critical components to our general manager track. But proud to say we've got that launched and it's going to go do big things for our pipeline development.
That's amazing. I was thinking as you were saying that somebody listening to this podcast right now who might be facing similar challenges, and I
Yep.
jotted it down when you said it. I wrote down many years because you said over the course of many years. What do you say to them if they're like, yeah, but my boss, my CEO, whomever it might be, they don't want to hear years. They want to hear months. They want to hear weeks. They want to hear yesterday. I mean, maybe just tell us a little bit like, how do you have a real conversation with those that you report to about what it really takes to develop people?
Yeah, so my partner Giordano Albertazzi, our CEO, I'm quite fortunate that we get to talk about what does the best look like? What does world class look like? And we have some of those people inside of our departments, inside of our company today. And we go benchmark those folks. What were the experiences they had in the course of their career that made them world class? And at the end of the day, we're still a manufacturer as well. So for us, we said some sort of commercial component is critical to being a general manager. An operational component is critical to being a general manager. A cross functional rotation, so go lead HR, go lead finance or supply chain, is a critical component to how you would generally manage a business. And we're not in a rush to make someone just go check boxes of capabilities without actually having to live with positive or negative consequences of those rotations or those decisions. And so when Gio and I talk, we talk about what is the realistic timeline for someone to get the full potential, the full experience from each one of those rotations. So that when they become that general manager, we know with a reasonable degree of certainty they are going to be 100% successful. And so that we would rather do it right than do it quick, Patrick, I think is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And I'm very supported by our CEO in that.
Yeah, it's amazing you have the support. Sometimes the leader, not yours, but other leaders out there can be like, I just want more people like that person over there. And it's like, well,
Sure.
do you know what it took to get that person? They didn't just
Exactly.
fall out of a machine ready to do that. They went through a life of experiences, and it's sometimes even things like whether it's decision making, like you talked about earlier, or some of these other general management skills, or saying I want my people to be more resilient or whatever. It's like
Yep.
these things come from experience. These things come from specific developmental opportunities that are really spelled out. Some training and development components to it, but other aspects as well. When you think about your career, if let's just say, Frank, for the heck of it, you're on a podcast, you're talking to thousands of people,
Yeah.
and those people range from people in the C-suite like yourself to people who are, earlier on in their career or anywhere in between, kind of like what you're doing right now. And you were asked, like, what's a good piece of advice you could give anybody, regardless of where they are in their journey? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the number one thing I've always lived by is understand the business that you support. So, whatever, if you're leading it, if you're driving the business yourself, if you're a support function in HR, if you're early career, mid career, late career, anywhere in the organizational hierarchy, understand your customer base, understand your products, understand your process of how you make those products. I think fundamentally, there's so much you can achieve when you know the basics of how the business mechanics work and ultimately your financials. On the personal side, the thing I've always subscribed to, besides the business acumen, is having a high say do ratio. So be someone your colleagues can count on. Be someone your team knows is going to be consistent and drive performance at the same level every single day because you have told them and you execute exactly what you said you were going to, that you can be counted on. So I think that high say do ratio mixed with this curiosity to learn every component of your particular business is usually a recipe for strong success.
Well, Frank, this has been a recipe for a great podcast. And I was confident when you came on, you'd deliver, and you definitely did that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Patrick, you make it easy. I appreciate the conversation and I wish you the best and have a good rest of your week.
Same to you. Folks who are listening today, I hope you found this to be an insightful and inspiring conversation. I know that I did. Whether you're navigating disruption, aiming to elevate HR's impact, or leading teams through some of these transformations like Frank and his organization are dealing with, I hope you found that this episode was for you, and I encourage you to share it with others. I'm Dr. Patrick Ledden. Go make it a great day.